I can tell you the exact moment the marriage died. It wasn't a fight. There were no raised voices, no slammed doors, no breaking glass or storming out into the night. It was a Tuesday, around 8:45 p.m. The dishes were done. The house was quiet, and she was sitting across from me on the couch, scrolling on her phone like she always did. I had just asked a simple question, not out of lust, not out of pressure, just a quiet, vulnerable attempt to connect. Do you want to come to bed with me tonight? She didn't even look up. Instead, she let out this light sigh, the kind you make when someone asks you to take the trash out while you're in the middle of a TV show. Then she said it, calmly, emotionlessly, as if she was reading a headline. I think once a month is enough. Just like that. No build-up, no warning, no warmth. She finally looked at me, and I swear to God, there was nothing behind her eyes. No anger, no sadness, just apathy, like she was talking about laundry or deciding which coffee to buy. I blinked once. Wait, what? She leaned back, phone still in her hand. I mean, intimacy, sex. Once a month is plenty, don't you think? I stared at her, confused, thinking maybe she was joking. Maybe this was some sort of sarcastic, dry humor she thought would land. But her expression never changed. Dead serious. She really meant it. That's when something in me, something I didn't even know how to name, cracked. It's hard to explain what that kind of moment feels like to someone who's never lived it. You feel your stomach drop. Your breath gets caught somewhere between your chest and throat. Not from fear, from humiliation. From the stunning realization that the person you love doesn't see you as a man anymore. Doesn't see your need for connection, affection, or desire as something sacred. Just annoying. Optional. Like a task that takes up space on her mental calendar. I didn't know what to say at first. I just sat there, frozen in that split second, feeling more rejected in my own living room than I'd ever felt in my life. I had heard of couples growing apart, of passion fading, but this was disdain wrapped in silence. I took a slow breath and asked, "Where is this coming from?" She shrugged. "I don't know. It's just how I feel." "How long have you felt like that?" "I don't know, a while." "A while." So all this time, all those nights she turned away, all those "I'm tired" or "not tonight" moments, she wasn't exhausted or preoccupied. She just didn't want me. Not emotionally, not physically, not completely. She had decided it was enough to stay married on paper, cohabitate, split bills, share space, but not share each other. And the worst part? She said it like I was supposed to agree. Like I'd nod and say, "Yeah, you're right. Honey, once a month sounds fair." I didn't. I couldn't. Because deep down, I wasn't just hearing once a month. I was hearing, "You don't matter to me. You're not attractive to me. You're just a chore now." I stood up, walked to the kitchen, poured a glass of water with hands that were shaking just a little. Not from rage, but from shame. I stared out the window into the backyard, listening to the distant hum of life outside our walls. Lawn sprinklers, a dog barking, a car pulling up across the street. And behind me, silence. She hadn't followed me, hadn't asked if I was okay, hadn't cared that what she just said had sent a dagger through the chest of our relationship. I came back in and sat down again, this time on the far side of the couch. "You know how that made me feel?" I asked. She shrugged again. "I'm just being honest. Honesty doesn't mean cruelty." She sighed again, tired, bored, like the conversation itself was a burden. "I work. I have a life. I have a lot going on. And honestly, I don't think intimacy should be expected like it's a scheduled service. It's not a transaction. A scheduled service?" That was the word she used. As if wanting to connect with a woman I vowed to love wasn't human. It was inconvenient. I didn't argue. I didn't yell. I didn't insult her or call her names. But something shut down inside me that night. Something important. Not my love. Not yet. But my hope. I realized, in that moment, that I could no longer trust her with my vulnerability, with my desire, with my emotional need to be seen and wanted by the person I chose. I was no longer a man in her eyes. I was a fixture, something to be tolerated, something to be scheduled, maybe once a month. After that night, things didn't immediately explode. We didn't have some climactic divorce argument. She thought the conversation was over, settled. But for me, it had just begun. I began noticing things I used to ignore. How she smiled at her phone more than she smiled at me. How she never asked me how I was doing unless it related to her day. How I could be gone for hours, and she wouldn't notice, but if I forgot to buy almond milk, it became a problem. She treated me like a utility, and I had finally read the meter. You see, most people think betrayal is cheating, but there's another kind of betrayal. The betrayal of neglect, of emotional starvation, of making your partner feel like they're asking for too much when all they want is to be wanted. And that night, the night she said, "Once a month is enough," was the night I understood the truth. I had spent years giving everything to someone who felt nothing for me. I slept on the couch that night. She didn't ask why. She didn't even look up. And as I lay there staring at the ceiling, I whispered something I had never said before. Not out loud, just in my head. If once a month is all I'm worth, then once a month is all you'll get. And so began my revenge. Not out of rage, not out of spite, but out of self-respect. People think heartbreak is loud. They imagine screaming, fights, doors slamming, voices breaking mid-sentence, plates crashing against walls. Movies teach us that when someone you love hurts you, the pain comes in explosions. But for me, it didn't explode. It folded in on itself, quiet, heavy, like a lung that suddenly forgets how to breathe. That night, after she looked me in the eye and said, "Once a month is enough," I didn't yell. I didn't protest. I didn't beg. I just sat there, my jaw clenched, my hands resting on my knees, fingers twitching from the inside out, my eyes unfocused, locked somewhere between the floor and the disappointment hanging in the air. And she just kept scrolling on her phone, as if nothing had been said, as if she hadn't just taken the last piece of my dignity and crushed it into dust with 5 casual words. I walked into the bathroom, closed the door behind me, and stared into the mirror for a long time. Not at my reflection, but through it. I saw a man who gave everything and asked for so little. A man who used to be playful, romantic, hungry for life. A man who had softened himself to accommodate someone who had hardened over time. And in return, he got rationed like a subscription plan. Once a month. That phrase replayed in my head like a scratched vinyl. Over and over. Once a month. It didn't even sound human. It sounded clinical. Like a schedule for car maintenance. Not a marriage. Not love. Not us. I didn't sleep that night. She went to bed like nothing was wrong, like she hadn't just shot a bullet into the center of our intimacy. Meanwhile, I lay on the couch staring at the ceiling fan, the shadows dancing on the wall. I wasn't angry. That was the strange part. There was no rage in me. No fantasy of getting even. No list of things I wanted to scream. There was just nothing. Emptiness. The kind of silence you feel in your chest when you realize the person lying in your bed doesn't see you anymore. Not really. Maybe they haven't in a long time. And now, they're not even trying to pretend. That was the first night something shifted in me. Not because she said no, but because I finally understood the deeper message underneath it. It wasn't about sex. It wasn't about being tired. It wasn't about stress. It was about rejection. Of me. She didn't want my hands. She didn't want my presence. She didn't want my effort, my energy, my intimacy. She just wanted the benefits, the comfort, the security. But the man, the human behind the husband, she left him waiting at the door. In the days that followed, I carried that pain like a quiet weight in my chest. I still did the dishes, still took out the trash, still paid the bills, still folded her laundry when she forgot it in the dryer. I moved through the routines like muscle memory. But something in me had died, and she didn't notice. Not when I stopped making jokes in the kitchen. Not when I started eating dinner in silence. Not when I went to bed without saying goodnight. She didn't ask, because she wasn't listening anymore. I started withdrawing from more than just her. Friends noticed first. A buddy of mine asked during lunch, "You good, man? You've been quiet lately." I nodded. Just tired. But it wasn't exhaustion. It was numbness. At work, I stopped volunteering for projects. I stopped talking in meetings. I just wanted to get through the day and go home, even though home didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a hotel. Cold, sterile, a place to rest, not to live. One night, I tried to say something again. We were watching TV, a movie she liked. I wasn't even watching it, just staring at the corner of the screen, thinking. I turned to her and said, "Do you even care that we haven't been close in weeks?" She sighed, not sadly, Annoyed. Are we doing this again? My heart sank. Again. Like wanting connection was a burden she had to tolerate once in a while. I nodded slowly and said, forget it. She didn't fight for it. Didn't ask me to finish. Didn't follow me when I left the room. And I think that was the moment I stopped trying. There's a loneliness that exists in relationships people never talk about. It's not about being alone. It's about being invisible in front of the one person who's supposed to see you most. I started spending more time at the gym. Started staying later at work. Started sleeping on the couch by accident more often. She never questioned it. Because she had already detached, she just didn't realize I was finally matching her energy. Then one morning, something hit me. I was brushing my teeth, staring blankly at the bathroom mirror, and a single, sharp thought cut through all the fog in my head. She doesn't think you'll ever leave. That was it. She had grown so comfortable with my consistency, my softness, my loyalty, that she assumed no matter how little she gave, I'd keep showing up, keep begging for attention, keep playing house while starving inside. That's when something else in me shifted, something colder, stronger. I didn't yell. I didn't write a dramatic letter. I didn't give her a speech. I just made a quiet decision. If she wants me once a month, then once a month is all she'll get. Not out of spite, out of self-respect. I started preparing myself. Emotionally, mentally, financially. Not to leave just yet, but to remove myself from the emotional leash she had kept me on for so long. I started reclaiming parts of me I had given up to keep the peace. And each day, I became quieter. Not silent from pain, silent from clarity. Because the most dangerous man isn't the one who yells. It's the one who no longer feels the need to explain himself. I didn't tell her. I didn't need to. After that night, after she looked me in the eye and told me once a month is enough, I stopped trying to fix what she had already buried. I stopped fighting for something she had walked away from emotionally long before I ever caught on. I didn't scream. I didn't explain. I didn't make a dramatic exit. Instead, I made a decision, a quiet, logical one. If I'm only good enough to be wanted once a month, then she'll only see me once a month. That would be the new rule. Her energy mirrored. The first weekend I left, I said I had work to catch up on. I packed a duffel bag with a few clothes, my laptop, some books, and left early Saturday morning. No kiss goodbye. No good morning. I just walked past her while she drank coffee at the kitchen counter in her robe. She didn't look up. I drove to a small Airbnb about 45 minutes out of town. Nothing fancy, just quiet. Just mine. I spent the entire weekend there reading, cooking, working out, and watching the sunrise. Alone. And for the first time in months, I slept through the night. No cold back turned toward me in bed. No forced silence. No tension in the air so thick it made my chest tighten. Just peace. When I came back Sunday night, she barely reacted. Everything okay? She asked, glancing up from her phone. Yeah, I said. She nodded. You eat. I did. That was it. No curiosity. No warmth. No affection. And inside I smiled. Because I knew she hadn't noticed yet. But she would. The next weekend I did it again. Left Saturday morning. Came back Sunday night. No explanation. I didn't answer her calls. I didn't send texts. If she asked anything when I got home, I kept it vague. Just had some stuff to clear my head. By the third weekend, she started to ask a few more questions. You going somewhere again? Yeah. Where? Out. Her brows furrowed, but she didn't press. She still didn't get it. She still thought I was in a mood. She thought I was passive-aggressively pouting because of our conversation weeks ago. But this wasn't pouting. This was discipline. By the fourth week, I changed the pattern. I stayed home that weekend, but I was a ghost. Didn't sit near her. Didn't engage in conversation unless she initiated. Didn't touch her. Didn't ask questions. Didn't offer anything. And when Sunday night came, I got up, grabbed my gym bag, and said, see you in a few days. She blinked. What do you mean? I'm staying at the apartment for a bit. Apartment. Yeah. Rented a spot close to the office. Easier than driving back and forth. It wasn't a lie. I had rented a place. But not for convenience. For distance. For space from the woman who once begged for my presence and then treated it like a burden. Week after week, I kept it going. Some weekends, I stayed at the apartment. Some weekends, I booked a cabin. Sometimes I just drove out to the countryside and sat in silence. She tried to ignore it at first. tried to act like it didn't bother her. But I could feel her anxiety building. She started texting more, asking where I was, who I was with, why I was being so distant. I never gave full answers, just enough to keep her wondering. A month later, I came home on a Friday evening. She had cooked. Not something quick, not pasta or soup or leftovers, but a full dinner. Steak, mashed potatoes, salad, wine poured into the good glasses. She greeted me at the door in a dress I hadn't seen in years. Makeup done, hair down. She looked beautiful, more effort in that 1 hour than I'd seen in the last 12 months combined. I walked in, nodded, and said, "Smells good." She smiled. "I thought we could have dinner together tonight. Like old times." I nodded again and sat at the table. The food was good. I told her that. She laughed softly and reached for my hand. I let her take it, but inside, I felt nothing, because I knew this wasn't love. It was fear. She felt the shift. She felt the air change. She felt the stability she once took for granted start to slip from her fingers. And now she was scrambling. But it was too late. After dinner, she leaned in, kissed my cheek, and whispered, "Come upstairs with me tonight." I smiled, the same polite smile I had given her months earlier when she said, "Not today." And I said, "Not tonight." Her eyes flickered. Confusion first, then hurt, then disbelief. I stood up, placed my plate in the sink, and said, "Thanks for dinner. I'll be at the apartment." That was the moment she realized I was no longer reacting. I was responding, not with drama, not with punishment, but with balance. She had set the standard. Once a month? Fine. I'd match her rhythm. I'd be there once a month. Present. Cold. Controlled. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to cheat. I didn't need to post pictures online to show her I was happy. I just needed to be gone. And in that absence, she finally started to feel what I'd felt for months, the ache of being unseen, the weight of a house that no longer felt like home, the loneliness of reaching out for someone who no longer felt warm. She started texting more, calling more, leaving notes around the house when I did show up. "I miss us. Can we talk?" I didn't mean it the way it came out, but I didn't respond to those either, because this wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about self-respect. I showed up once a month, had dinner, watched a movie, slept in the guest room. She cried once. I didn't comfort her, because I remembered all the nights I cried silently in the dark, and she rolled over, arms crossed, pretending not to hear. And now, she would hear my silence too. At first, she didn't think anything of it. The space I created was subtle, clean, measured. I didn't slam doors or pack suitcases in anger. I didn't give her an emotional warning shot. I didn't even break our routines loudly. I just started vanishing, one thread at a time. It began with the texts. I used to check in throughout the day. Little things. Want anything on the way home? Just finished a meeting or dinner plans? Nothing dramatic. Just signals. Signals that I was tuned in, that I cared, that she was on my radar, even in the middle of chaos. She never really responded with the same energy. I get dry replies, short ones, or nothing at all. So I stopped. One day, I simply decided to match her energy. I didn't tell her. She noticed it by the third day. "You okay?" she asked that night as I came in, put my bag down, and went straight to the fridge. "Yeah," I said. "You've been quiet lately. Just been busy." She tilted her head like she was searching for something in my expression, some hint of emotion. But I gave her nothing, just that new, patient silence I'd grown used to, the kind that used to crush me. Now, it empowered me. The next change came with my schedule. I stopped announcing things. I used to tell her when I'd be late, where I was going, if I was traveling for work. I used to keep her in the loop, not because she asked, but because I thought that's what partners do. But now, she got what she gave. I left early in the mornings. Some days I didn't come home at all. I'd stay at the apartment or crash at a friend's place if I was working late on a project. She'd text, "Coming home tonight?" I'd reply, "Not this week. It's not my week to be home." The first time I said that, she didn't understand. "Not your week." It rattled around in her head for a while before she finally replied, "What does that mean?" I never answered, because explaining would have given her clarity. And clarity was no longer my gift to her. One Friday, she called me 3 times back-to-back while I was at the gym. I didn't answer. When I got back to the apartment and opened my messages, there was one simple line waiting for me. "You're seriously not coming home this weekend?" I stared at it for a moment, then typed back, "Monthly check-in isn't until next week. Didn't you set that rule?" She left me on read for hours. But I knew she saw it. When I finally returned home for one of those monthly visits, I walked into a clean house. Candles lit. She was wearing a soft robe I hadn't seen in a long time. Music played low from the Bluetooth speaker. She smiled when she saw me, like nothing had happened, like I hadn't been gone for almost 3 weeks. "Hey, stranger," she said, voice light, eyes trying to search mine. "Hey," I said, hanging my coat. "I made dinner." "That's nice." We sat, ate, talked a little about the news, work, the neighbor's dog. She tried to flirt. She reached for my hand across the table. I let her, but I didn't hold on, because now I was only there for my schedule. Not hers, not ours. She started unraveling about a month later. The visits were too brief, too distant. I came and went like a landlord inspecting a property, polite, composed, detached. She couldn't pin me down anymore, couldn't read me. And for the first time since I'd known her, I saw something new in her expression. Uncertainty. It terrified her. She asked more questions. "Where are you staying? Are you seeing someone? Why are you acting like a guest in your own house?" To all of them, I had one kind of response, flat, honest, unbothered. Just doing what feels right. Or if I wanted to make her squirm, "I'm respecting your pace." Because that's what it was, wasn't it? Her pace. She had set the tempo. One touch a month. One moment of affection here and there. One flicker of intimacy between endless weeks of silence. So I adjusted. And now she hated the very rhythm she created. She began overcompensating. I'd show up to the house and find her suddenly glowing. Hair done. Lingerie folded on the bed like a staged photo. Candles lit in the hallway. "Wine ready. Stay the weekend," she'd whisper. I'd smile. "Can't. Early meeting." Her jaw would twitch, but she'd swallow it down. "Come to bed, at least." "I'll crash on the couch. Don't want to keep you up." She tried asking softly one night, "Why are you doing this?" And I said, "You did it first." I just listened. Eventually, she couldn't take it anymore. She broke. I came in one Friday night to grab some clothes. I wasn't planning to stay. She stood in the kitchen, arms folded, eyes red like she'd been holding it in all day. "You can't keep doing this," she snapped. "Doing what?" "This. Disappearing. Coming and going like you don't live here. I don't even know who you are anymore." I tilted my head. "That makes 2 of us." She stepped closer, voice rising. "Are you punishing me for what I said? Is that what this is?" "No." "Then what the hell is it?" I didn't flinch. "It's me adjusting. You said you were comfortable with once a month. So I figured I'd give you that. One visit, one dinner, one weekend, once a month. Just like you wanted." She froze, because hearing her own words echoed back at her. That's when it finally hit. She had thought she could ration affection without consequence. She had thought I would just endure it. She never expected me to match her energy and beat her at her own game. Now she walks on eggshells. Every time I come home, she's extra careful. More dressed up, more polite, more desperate. But I don't come home for her. I come home for me. To remind myself that I survived the deepest rejection a man can feel. The slow erasure of being unwanted by the one person who once couldn't keep their hands off of you. And now, she's the one checking her phone. She's the one wondering where I am. She's the one counting the days until I return. Not because she wants to love me, but because she knows now I don't need her anymore. It's funny how quickly people panic when they start getting a taste of their own medicine. Only it wasn't medicine. Not for me. It was a cure. After months, maybe years of being emotionally starved in my own house, something had finally shifted. And the shift wasn't loud or theatrical. It was subtle, cold, permanent. I wasn't punishing her. I was preserving me. The man who used to come home early just to spend time with her now arrived late and left early. The man who used to cook her favorite meals without her asking now ate alone or ordered out for one. The man who used to grab her hand on the couch, kiss her neck in the morning, bring her coffee in bed, he stopped reaching because she'd trained him not to. Every shrug, every turn back, every not today, every cold, hollow bedtime conversation, or worse, the complete absence of one, had taught me a lesson I should have learned much earlier. When a woman stops cherishing your presence, your absence becomes a gift. So I gave it to her, not with anger, not with games, but with dignity. I became the man I used to be before she dulled me. Focused, disciplined, hard to reach. I threw myself into my work, my projects, my late-night reading, my physical training. I cleaned up my habits, stopped checking my phone every 5 minutes hoping she had something to say that wasn't cold or dismissive. She rarely had anything to say before. Now, she couldn't stop talking. I barely see you anymore. I feel like I don't know what's going on in your life. Why don't you share anything with me? I used to dream of hearing those questions. Used to wish she cared enough to wonder where I was or how I felt. Now that she finally did, I had nothing to say. Not out of spite, but because I genuinely didn't think of her anymore when I moved through my day. She had been a part of my routine, not because she deserved to be, but because I had included her even when she excluded me. Now, she was a guest in the parts of my life that mattered most. She tried to bring me back, made dinner more often, sat next to me on the couch, legs touching mine like old times. Tried to laugh at my jokes again, the same jokes she used to ignore with that indifferent half-smile. But I wasn't the same man. I didn't need that approval anymore. I didn't crave her attention like a starving dog waiting for scraps. I had tasted my own silence, my own focus, my own power, and I wasn't going to give that up to play house with a woman who only wanted me now that I'd stopped chasing. One night, she stood in the doorway of the guest room, where I'd been sleeping for months. I was sitting on the edge of the bed, tying my shoes before heading out for a late run. She lingered there like she had something to say, but couldn't decide how to say it. Finally, she whispered, "Are we okay?" I stood up slowly and looked at her, really looked at her. She had tears in her eyes, maybe even remorse swimming in her voice. But I didn't feel the familiar ache in my chest. I didn't feel the urge to hold her or fix it or say, "Of course we are," because we weren't, and I didn't care enough to lie about it. I nodded once. "We're peaceful." Then I walked past her. She hated the silence. She hated that I didn't argue, didn't beg, didn't fight to be seen. Because that's what she was used to, a man who'd chase. A man who'd over-explain his pain. A man who'd stay loyal to the idea of her, even when the reality of her was cold and dismissive. But I wasn't chasing anymore. I was becoming a ghost she couldn't hold, a version of me she barely recognized. And that terrified her. She started digging. Checked my call logs, asked indirect questions about where I'd been, who I'd been with, why I was suddenly dressing better, walking with more confidence, posting less on social media. I didn't give her answers, because she wasn't entitled to them anymore. She had forfeited that right when she made me feel like a nuisance for wanting connection. Now, she wanted connection, and I was the one with my back turned. I remember one afternoon, I came home from a weekend away. She had cooked again. Same setup, wine, candles, soft music, nice clothes. She tried to pretend like things were normal, like we were fine. We weren't, and I had no intention of pretending we were. I grabbed a plate of food, thanked her politely, and sat on the far end of the couch. I watched the game on my phone. She tried to make conversation. I gave short, non-committal answers. And after 15 minutes of silence, she finally snapped. "Why are you treating me like a stranger?" I paused the video, set the phone down, looked her straight in the eyes, and I said, "Because that's how you treated me for a long time. And now it's what we are." Her jaw clenched. Her eyes welled up. She wanted to argue, wanted to explain, but I didn't give her space for that. I stood, rinsed my plate, and went to bed. Alone. Again. By choice this time. People don't understand how powerful indifference is until they're on the receiving end of it. For so long, I begged for her time, her touch, her emotional presence. And she gave me crumbs, rationed connection like it was an inconvenience. Now, she was starving for a fraction of what I used to give freely. And I wasn't angry. I was just done. She started sending texts during the day. "I miss you. Can we talk? Let's spend the weekend together." Just us. I didn't respond to most of them. And when I did, it was with one-word replies. Busy. Maybe. Not this week. She was spiraling, and I was rising. The house felt different now. The silence that used to crush me, now it kept me calm. Her presence that once filled me with anxiety, Now it faded into background noise. She had become the version of me she never thought she'd meet. Ignored, unprioritized, disconnected. The difference? I didn't need to say a word. She felt it every time I walked in and didn't ask how her day was. Every time I left and didn't say goodbye. Every night, I slept in the other room without hesitation. She felt what I used to feel, only I had lived it in silence. She had to watch it now. It didn't take long for her to realize she had lost control. At first, she thought I was just being distant, that I was having a phase, that I needed space, maybe even that I was trying to make a point. But over time, it became clear to her. I wasn't teaching a lesson. I wasn't waiting for her to change. I was gone. Not physically, not yet, but emotionally, mentally. I had already packed my bags and left the version of me that once worshipped her. And that's when she shifted tactics. She started dressing up again. Not occasionally, consistently. Full hair and makeup on a Tuesday night. Wearing fitted clothes just to watch TV in the living room. Spraying perfume before I came home, even though we weren't going anywhere. It was strange at first. Unnatural. This woman, who used to wear oversized sweatshirts for days, who didn't even glance at herself in the mirror some mornings, was suddenly glamorous again. I noticed. Of course I did. But I didn't compliment her. I didn't feed it. I just nodded and went about my business. Then came the food. For months, she barely lifted a finger in the kitchen. We'd either order in or I'd cook. Half the time she'd pick at her plate like she wasn't even hungry. But now, she cooked nearly every night. Full meals. Not just food, effort. The table was set. Napkins folded. Wine chilled. Candles lit. She'd say, "Dinner's ready," with that familiar tilt in her voice, the one she used to use back when things were good. I sat, ate, complimented the seasoning, and cleared my plate. Then I stood up, rinsed it in the sink, and went back to my room. Not cold, not cruel, just unreachable. Because now I knew what it meant to be treated like an obligation. And I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of thinking she could seduce me with a hot plate and a fake smile. Then came the texts. Small ones at first. "Good morning, Red Heart. Hope your day's going well. Just thinking of you." Little digital echoes of the intimacy she once rationed. The same woman who used to leave my messages on read was now replying within seconds. And for what? To spark something? To see if I still cared? To test if the leash she once wrapped around my neck still tugged when she pulled? It didn't. She got bolder after that. One night, I came home late from the apartment. She met me at the door, wearing lingerie I hadn't seen since our honeymoon. Her perfume lingered in the hallway. The lights were dimmed, and soft jazz hummed from the speakers. I didn't say anything at first. Just walked past her and set my keys down on the counter. She followed me. I thought maybe you want to stay in tonight. I turned, faced her, and gave her a look that said everything I didn't feel like repeating. She waited for a reaction. Something. Anything. Instead, I said, "You remember the last time you touched me?" She blinked. I mean, really touched me. Not out of obligation. Not because I asked. But because you wanted to. Her eyes dropped. I nodded slowly. Exactly. Then I walked to the guest room and shut the door. She didn't follow. Her attempts didn't stop. She kept trying to start conversations. Asking about my work. Making jokes. Laughing harder at things I barely said. She even started calling me babe again, as if the sound of it could rewind the clock. It didn't, because you can't unburn a bridge by acting like it was never on fire. She tried to flirt one night in the kitchen while I was washing dishes. Slid up behind me, arms around my waist, head on my back. For a moment, I closed my eyes. Not because I missed it, but because I remembered all the nights I stood there just like this, alone, while she watched TV, while she went to bed without saying good night, while I asked for closeness and got silence. And now, she was reaching for a man who had learned to live without her. I gently removed her hands from my body and said, "Not today." She flinched like I'd slapped her. I didn't look back. She started crying more often after that. I'd catch her wiping her face in the bathroom mirror, sitting in the hallway alone, staring blankly at the TV with tears pooling in her eyes. But I didn't run to her, because I remembered crying in the same rooms, in silence, and being met with apathy. I remembered lying in bed, feeling invisible while she scrolled through her phone beside me. I remembered begging with my presence and being denied with hers. So now, I let her sit with the emptiness she once gifted me. One day she broke down completely. I was packing a small bag to head to the apartment for the weekend. She stood in the doorway, arms trembling, eyes puffy. "Why are you doing this?" I zipped the bag. "Doing what?" "Acting like you don't care." I met her eyes. Calm, unshaken. "I'm not acting." She stepped forward. "Please don't go. We can talk. I miss you." I nodded. "I used to miss you too. I didn't know what I was doing." "You did," I said. "You just didn't care then." A sob broke from her throat, but I didn't flinch. I walked past her, stopped at the door, and said, "You taught me how to live without you. I just finally learned." And I left. The truth is, her efforts were never about love. They were about losing power, about feeling me slip through her fingers and realizing she was no longer the center of my world, no longer the priority, no longer the prize. She wanted the old me back, the man who texted her every morning, who planned dates, who cooked, kissed her forehead, and asked what was wrong when she sighed at dinner. But she wasn't willing to become the woman who earned that version of me again. She thought makeup and a smile could undo months of silence and denial. But I'd already been to hell and made peace with the fire. It happened on a Thursday night. I had been gone for 6 days. No explanation, no promises of return, no text except for a single "all good" after she asked where I was. That was all she got now, what she used to give me. The man who used to come home on time, who used to kiss her neck at the door, who used to cook dinner and ask about her day, now entered like a tenant. Quiet, controlled, unbothered. And that night, she couldn't take it anymore. I walked into the house just before 10 p.m. worn from the road, bag slung over one shoulder. I kicked my shoes off by the door, turned on the hallway light, and stepped into the kitchen. She was there, sitting at the counter, still in her work clothes, but her makeup was smudged and her eyes were red. She'd been waiting. Not like before, not passive, not indifferent. This was different. The air was thick. I poured a glass of water without saying a word. Her voice cracked as she spoke. "You're really just going to walk in like this is normal?" I took a sip, set the glass down. "It is normal." Her eyebrows pulled together. Her lips parted like she couldn't believe what she was hearing. "You've been gone almost a week, Ryan." I nodded. "I know. And you don't think that's a problem?" I looked her in the eyes, calm, level, cold. "I didn't hear you complain when you disappeared emotionally for over a year. When you rationed my presence, my touch, my heart to once a month." She stood up fast, like the words slapped her. "That's not fair, isn't it?" I said. "You're not even trying to fix things." I tilted my head. "You mean like I used to? When I brought you flowers and you rolled your eyes. When I kissed you and you turned away. When I sat on this same couch begging for connection and you told me to grow up. You mean like that?" Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. "Please don't do this," she whispered. But I wasn't doing anything. I was simply reflecting back the energy she'd given me for so long. Only now, she was finally awake enough to feel it. She stepped forward, hands shaking. "I don't know what's going on with you, but I swear, I feel like you're seeing someone." There it was. Desperation always pulls that card when logic runs out. "I'm not," I said simply. She looked stunned that I didn't defend myself harder. "You don't touch me. You barely look at me. You come and go like I'm not even here. What am I supposed to think?" I took another sip of water. Calm, silent. Then I said, "Once a month, right?" Her body stiffened. "What?" I set the glass down and walked past her. "You said once a month was enough. That was your standard. That was what you decided a husband should be worth. And now you're mad I gave you what you asked for." She turned to face me fully now, voice rising, panic thick in her tone. "That's not what I meant. I was stressed. I was tired. I didn't know how else to say. You knew exactly what you were saying. I cut in. You said it without blinking, without thinking twice. And when I tried to explain how it made me feel, you shut me down. So I adjusted." Tears spilled from her eyes now. Actual, full tears, not the silent ones I used to see from a distance. "I'm sorry," she whispered. And that was the thing. I believe she was. But not for the right reasons. She wasn't sorry she said it. She was sorry it worked. She was sorry she no longer had control. She was sorry the man who used to beg for her time was now rationing his. "I've changed," she said, stepping closer, pleading with her hands. "I see that. Then why are you still so cold?" I took a long breath. Not angry, just done. Because cold is all I've known from you for the last year. And now that I've learned to live in the cold, I don't feel the need to run toward warmth that only shows up when it's convenient. She covered her mouth, sobbing quietly now. "I didn't know you were hurting that bad." "You didn't ask," I said. "You didn't want to know." I looked her up and down, this woman I had loved, cherished, waited for, cried over. "I beg for you," I said, "every night, in the silence, in the spaces where love was supposed to be, and all you gave me was distance. Now you want to hold me when I've already let go." She fell to her knees. Literally. I'd always heard of it happening in books or movies, but it was real. She sank to the floor, covered her face, and said the words that once would have broken me. "Please don't give up on us." I crouched down, not to hold her, just to meet her at eye level. And I said, calmly, "You gave up a long time ago. You just didn't expect me to follow." Then I stood, walked down the hallway, and shut the door behind me. I didn't feel triumphant. This wasn't victory. It was closure. Because when someone teaches you that your presence is optional, you stop offering it. When someone treats your desire like an inconvenience, you stop desiring them. And when someone believes you'll always be there, no matter how many times they say not today, you leave without a goodbye. And that is the goodbye. The thing about sympathy is it has a memory. You can't starve someone for years and then cry victim when they stop feeding you. But that's exactly what she tried to do. It started slowly. Little side comments dropped during brunch with her sister or in phone calls with old college friends. At first, they were subtle, the kind of half-truths that don't sound like lies until you look at the full picture. "He's been so cold lately. I don't even know where he goes anymore. It's like he's shut down out of nowhere." I didn't care at first. I knew how it worked. She had to say something. People were bound to notice the shift eventually. The dinner party invites we used to accept as a couple that she now declined alone. The Sunday family lunches I stopped showing up to. The posts she liked but never commented on, the ones where people tagged me, smiling, peaceful, miles away from the woman who used to say not tonight like it was part of her routine. So, naturally, she needed to explain the distance somehow. But she didn't expect what came next. Because the people she was turning to, they remembered things too. Her best friend, Sarah, who had once pulled me aside at a barbecue and said, "I don't know how you deal with her sometimes. You're a good man, Ryan. Don't lose yourself." Or her sister, Rachel, who once asked her, in front of me, why she always looked annoyed when I tried to be affectionate. And her mother? She had watched me spend 2 straight hours fixing a clogged sink in her kitchen one Thanksgiving while her daughter sat scrolling Instagram in the other room. People noticed, even when she thought they didn't. And now, her cries for support were echoing in rooms full of people who had seen the truth unfold in real time. It didn't take long before she realized the well was dry. The validation she expected, the "oh no, he's being distant," or "what a jerk, you poor thing," didn't come. Instead, she started hearing uncomfortable truths. One of her friends, Nina, apparently said, "Maybe he's just reacting to how you treated him. I remember you used to brush him off all the time." Her cousin, Michael, was even more blunt. "You told me once that you were done being touched. Now you're mad he doesn't want to come home? Sounds like you're getting what you asked for." Even her sister, the one she trusted most, gave her a look and said, "Rachel, I love you, but let's not pretend you didn't push him away first." And that was the beginning of her isolation. The problem with telling only your side of the story is that sometimes people already heard the other side from your own mouth. The years of eye rolls, the sarcastic comments, the way she used to complain about men always needing attention. It all came back to her, in whispers, in stares, in awkward pauses during conversations she used to control. And it hit her harder than I ever could have hoped. I didn't tell anyone anything. I never had to. That was the beautiful part of it, the silent revenge. I didn't go around bashing her. I didn't post cryptic quotes online. I didn't text mutual friends saying, "Let me tell you what she did to me." I just lived. I healed. I detached. And people noticed. The same way they noticed her unraveling. She called me one afternoon after a visit to her mother's house. "You've been talking to people," she accused. I was in the middle of a workout. Calm, collected. "No, I haven't." "Then why does everyone act like I'm the bad guy?" I didn't say anything. She waited, and when I didn't respond, she snapped. "Are you seriously just letting everyone turn on me?" That's when I said it. "You turned on me first. I just stopped protecting the version of you that they used to believe in." Dead silence. Because she knew it was true. You see, for a long time, I defended her, even when she didn't deserve it. I'd lie for her when she bailed on plans. I'd make excuses when people asked why she never seemed happy. I'd say things like she's just tired or she has a lot going on. But now, I let people draw their own conclusions. And they did. She stopped getting invited to certain things. Some friends started calling me directly, not her. Her family, once full of opinionated voices, suddenly went quiet when she brought up my name. And that silence? It was louder than any insult, because it meant even they no longer believed her. She tried one last attempt at spinning it. Posted an old photo of us online with the caption, "You can do everything for someone and still not be enough." I got a few messages that day from people we both knew. One said, "That's rich coming from her." Another simply replied, "Took you long enough to walk away." And I realized something. Her manipulation didn't just fail, it backfired. Because people weren't stupid. They watched the cracks form. They saw who showed up. They remembered who smiled through rejection and who sat with crossed arms while love fell apart. I think the part that broke her wasn't losing me. It was realizing she couldn't rewrite the ending. She couldn't play the victim in a story where too many people already knew the truth. She thought people would pity her. But instead, they pitied the man she lost. And by then, so did she. People think the most powerful revenge is something loud, some dramatic act of retaliation that brings the house down. But real power, real revenge, is peace. And when I finally detached from her, truly and fully, that peace came like a sunrise after a long, sleepless night. There was no announcement, no dramatic breakup speech, no ultimatum. I didn't pack my bags and slam the door. I just started letting go, piece by piece. It began with my mind. I stopped obsessing over her moods, stopped wondering what she was thinking, stopped reading into every sigh, every eye roll, every not tonight. I stopped hoping that today would be the day she softened, reached for me, or whispered something that sounded like love. I didn't need it anymore, because I had found something stronger. Self-respect. Then came the physical detachment. I started spending more time away, but not in bitterness, just naturally. I'd leave in the mornings before she woke up, stop for coffee alone, hit the gym, head to work with focus. I wasn't dragging my feet anymore. I wasn't in survival mode. I was clear. At the office, my performance picked up. Meetings that used to bore me suddenly felt engaging. Projects I had once put off became opportunities. Promotions I had passed on because I was always trying to make things work at home were now mine for the taking. People noticed. My boss pulled me aside one Friday and said, "I don't know what changed, but keep doing it. You look 10 years lighter." And he was right. I was lighter because I had finally dropped the weight of a marriage that only I had been carrying. At night, I took walks. Not aimless ones. Intentional. Quiet. I'd stroll through neighborhoods I didn't live in, looking at homes lit with laughter and warmth. Not because I was bitter, but because I was learning what I wanted again, what I deserved. I started journaling again. I started reading books that had nothing to do with fixing relationships or understanding emotional distance. I rediscovered me, and the strangest thing happened during that season. I felt joy again, not the kind that bursts through the door, the kind that hums softly in the background. A steady, dependable peace. And her? She stayed in the house, she turned cold. Now she was the one checking her phone, waiting to see if I'd be home. Now she was the one asking, "How was your day?" and getting a half smile in return. Now she was the one watching me walk in the door and not knowing if I'd stay or leave again in the morning. She didn't yell. She didn't accuse anymore. Because she could feel it, the detachment. It wasn't a performance. It wasn't a tactic. It was real. I had stopped trying to make her love me. And the space that gave me, it became my sanctuary. Eventually, I met someone. Not because I was looking, because I was finally open in ways I hadn't been when I was holding on to something dead. She was kind, curious, simple. She didn't demand attention, she offered it. She didn't roll her eyes when I spoke, she leaned in. She didn't ration herself like affection was a privilege. She gave without a scoreboard. It wasn't love at first sight. It was respect at first word. And it reminded me that intimacy didn't have to feel like begging. I didn't cheat. Let me be clear about that. I didn't betray her the way she had betrayed me. Emotionally, silently, by shutting down without explanation. But emotionally, I was already gone. So when the new woman entered my life, it wasn't a comparison. It was a contrast. She didn't have to be amazing to shine. She just had to be present. And that alone made her feel like sunlight. I didn't parade the new connection. I didn't post photos or bring her around friends too early. I wasn't trying to prove anything. I wasn't trying to show off. I was just happy, quietly, deeply, consistently. And the happier I got, the more I saw the walls close in around my wife. She saw it too. She saw in the way I walked, upright, full, firm. She heard it in my voice, calm, unshaken, absent of that desperate edge I used to carry when I pleaded to be understood. She noticed it in my eyes, no longer scanning her for warmth. She was no longer the center of my orbit. She wasn't even on my map. She tried once to ask about the change. We were sitting at the kitchen table, early morning, sipping coffee. Silence hung between us, but it wasn't angry. It was just unfamiliar. "Can I ask you something?" she said. I looked up. "Yeah." "You seem better." I nodded. "I am." "What changed?" I didn't answer right away. I wanted to be kind. I didn't want to crush her. But I also wasn't going to lie. So I said, "I stopped needing what you wouldn't give. And once I stopped needing it, I realized I was never the problem." She blinked hard, lips parting like she had something to say. But there was nothing left to defend, because her silence had spoken for years, and now, mine was simply the echo. I didn't destroy her. I didn't take the house. Didn't try to hurt her. Didn't throw her mistakes in her face at every opportunity. I just detached. And while I rose, quietly and without permission, she stayed, stuck in the cold walls she had built. Alone in the silence she once offered me nightly. And now, she sat there hoping for a sliver of warmth from the man she once told. Once a month is enough. It was quiet the day she finally broke. No screaming, no ultimatums, no kitchen arguments or thrown accusations. Just the low hum of the air conditioner in the background, the ticking of a wall clock, and the sound of a woman realizing, too late, that everything she once took for granted had already slipped through her hands. I had just walked in from work, same way I always did. Calm, grounded, not eager, not bitter, just existing. She was sitting at the kitchen table, hands clasped like she was praying, eyes glassy, shoulders hunched. She had been crying. I could tell by the redness under her eyes and the subtle puff in her cheeks. I poured a glass of water, took a sip, and leaned against the counter. She stared at me for a moment, then finally spoke. "Are you really leaving?" I didn't answer immediately. I wanted to, but not out of cruelty, out of clarity. This moment deserved truth, not avoidance, not sugar. So I nodded. "Yes." She looked down at her hands, lips trembling. "Is there someone else?" I shook my head. "No, there's just me." Her brows furrowed. "What does that mean?" "It means I finally chose myself." She stood up slowly and walked toward me, her bare feet making soft sounds against the tile. "I know I was wrong," she whispered. "I know I pushed you away. I was stressed, I was tired, I was in a bad place, and I took it out on you." I kept my eyes on her, steady. "I didn't mean it when I said that. About once a month." "But you said it," I replied gently. "And you meant it in that moment. You said it without hesitation, without a second thought. That's who you were." Her tears broke free then, trailing down her face like rainfall. "But I've changed. I've tried. I'm trying." "I see that," I said. "But change doesn't erase history, and healing doesn't always bring someone back." She stepped closer. "I'll do anything," she said. "Please, don't go." And for a moment, I saw the woman I used to know. The softness, the vulnerability, the openness I begged for all those nights. She rolled over and turned her back to me. Now she was finally looking at me, finally seeing me, finally begging. But the problem with regret? It has no weight when it arrives at the wrong door. I set the glass down and stood straighter. You know what I used to dream of? I asked. She blinked, eyes wide. I used to dream of you looking at me like that. Of you reaching for me. Of you saying I miss you without me having to break myself in half just to be noticed. I know, she said, crying harder. I know that now. I used to want so badly for you to just meet me halfway. To hug me when I walked through the door. To say I love you first. To touch me without being asked. To treat me like more than someone who paid bills and took out the trash. I was selfish, she choked. I shook my head. No, you were indifferent. And that's worse. She dropped her knees like before. But this time I didn't flinch. I didn't crouch down to meet her there. Because I wasn't broken anymore. And I didn't belong on the floor. She gripped my jeans, sobbing, clinging. I can be better. I can give you more. I just didn't know what I had. I thought you'd always be here. And there it was. The sentence every man hears too late. I thought you'd always be here. The most dangerous assumption in any relationship. That someone who gives consistently will never stop giving. That someone who stays through the silence will never walk away. That loyalty is infinite, no matter how many times you say not today. I gently stepped back and knelt to her level. But this time, to speak one final truth. I looked her dead in the eyes, soft but solid, and said, I gave you everything. You gave me once a month. Her body collapsed inward, shaking from the weight of that sentence. I'm sorry, she whispered. I forgive you, I replied. And I did. Not for her. For me. Because forgiveness was never about her making it right. It was about me no longer needing anything from her. I stood up, walked to the door, and grabbed the bag I had packed earlier. It wasn't heavy. Just clothes. A toothbrush. A few books. All I really needed. She didn't move. She stayed there on the floor, sobbing into her hands, her world crumbling beneath her, the same way mine had once done while she scrolled through her phone and said, You're being dramatic. Now, there were no words left. No fights to have. No more months to wait for change that came too late. As I opened the door, I turned back one last time, and I said, I hope you find peace. Then I left. No fireworks. No anger. No regret. Just silence. The kind of silence I used to beg her to fill. Now it was mine, and it was beautiful,